Hello YouTube, and welcome back to the garage. Yes, it is indeed time for a very long overdue update on the project CB-1. Unfortunately, I've been a bit busy messing around with other bikes. So earlier on this week, we went out for our first little play around on the pit bikes up at Red Lodge in Cambridgeshire. And although it was cold, it was all good fun. But of course, that needed a quick service. The other CB-1, that's also had a good going over and a service, and went for its MOT the other day. So we've got that back on the road for another year. And obviously still working on the race bike, getting that ready for hopefully the beginning of May. So, but long last, we're back on the CB-1. So there has been a little bit of progress on it. If I move you around and zoom you in, hopefully. You can see the headlight bracket is all finished. Quite pleased with that, and it's got the little mini indicator mounted just here where I wanted it. Hopefully that shows up all right. And you'll also notice that I've got my little mini speedo, and that's kind of mounted on a bracket at the moment, but that's only a temporary one while I was messing around trying to get dimensions and figure out how big the bracket's going to be. The other thing you may notice, I've changed the headlight. So I really did like this headlight, and I was really hoping to use it. The problem is it was just too deep at the back here and would have had to stick out quite a lot. And then we had the problems with the ignition barrel clashing with it, and also, as it turned out, the speedo was going to clash with it. So I decided the best thing to do was just cut my losses and get rid of it. Those of you familiar with the CB-1 will probably recognise this as the standard CB-1 headlight. It does seem to be the way with this bike. The more I try and change on it, the more I end up going back to the original components. Whether that's a sign of how good Honda design things, or whether it's just because I'm lazy and it's the easiest option, I don't know. But we've got the headlight on. I will be getting a newer one. That one's a bit pitted and rusted. So that's the front end all sorted. So let's move back around to the rear where we started. And you can see I've cut off the original number plate mount. Now the plastic that they use for these is a bit of a nuisance to cut. It's a very flimsy plastic, and it doesn't cut very well. But I used my Dremel, and I have got a little circular saw attachment in it. So I very carefully cut along the edge and then gently sanded it down. There's a few scuff marks on it, and it's going to need a bit of treatment, but hopefully a bit of bumper black will get that back to as good as new. So we're going to look at doing the number plate mount. But before I do that, just some interest. You may recall in the last video where I replaced the fan on the other bike, it was refusing to start, which I thought was all a bit odd because it was running perfectly a few months ago. So we did all the usual tests, got to the fuel pump, bypassed the fuel pump, fired up straight away, ran beautifully. So I kind of knew this was going to be my culprit. Now with these fuel pumps, you can actually remove this black plastic cap, and underneath it is a set of points that open and close, and that's what actually activates the fuel pump. So I took the cap off the back, and that's what I found. It's a miracle it even worked at all, to be honest. Yeah, there was no way this was going to be repaired. So I actually had a rummage around in the spares box, found another fuel pump, and that's been fitted. So yeah, watch out for that. I think the reason why this one went like this is the other bike does tend to get pushed outside while I'm working in the garage, and it tends to sit out on its side stand in all weathers. And what happens is the water runs down the seat into the battery tray, drips out the battery tray straight onto the fuel pump, and obviously moisture has just accumulated there while it's been sat, because of course not running it, these never got hot to cause the water to evaporate. But yeah, right mess there. Anyway, enough waffling, let's get back on with the project in hand. So having cut the original number plate mount off, we're going to need to make something to hold the number plate. Now got your original number plate, which is, whoops, which is this jobby, and it's absolutely massive. It's the standard size, which is in good old-fashioned metric imperial, approximately 9 inches by 7 inches, and does the job, but it does look a little bit big. So I'm going to be a bit cheeky. I'm going to get myself a little custom number plate. I'm going to get something a bit smaller. Now this isn't the one I'm going to use. This is one I bought for another project that, funnily enough, never happened. And these are only, let's have a look, 7 inch. There we go. You can probably see it better that way. So 7 inches by 5.5 inches. The letters are a bit smaller than the legal limits, but I've used these in the past and fingers crossed you generally get away with it. But when I design the number plate mount, I'm going to design it, take the small one, but make sure it's got enough room to accommodate the original large one if I ever need to refit it for any reason. So let's get on. Right, the first thing I've done is I've cut out an old pizza box, and that's going to give me my template that we're going to fix underneath here. So I've sort of messed around, fitted the template and played around with angles, and I think that's quite a nice little angle. It's going to sit down a little bit, just like that, but also, like I said, making sure there is enough room to accommodate the original number plate as well. So here's our little template. I also need to make up some sort of mount for the indicators. I was hoping to use the original indicator mounts, but that didn't really work. In fact, with the original number plate on, because they were so small, they didn't actually protrude past the number plate, which was going to be an issue. Shouldn't be such an issue now that I've decided to go for a smaller one, but let's see. So, having made up my template, I'm going to get some metal. In an ideal world, I would love to have made this out of aluminium, but I just haven't got the facilities to weld aluminium. So I've got this plate. Now you may be thinking, that's a big old thick lump of plate, and you're right, but because of the design, it's going to make a bit more sense as we go along. So if you just bear with me, and hopefully, like I said, everything should make sense as we go along. So let's switch you over to the bench. So my steel plate, my template, and there should be just enough steel to accommodate it. Okay, so there's my cut lines. And what I'm going to go for is just a single piece coming down with a piece welded across it, which is why I'm going for the slightly thicker sheet steel. But of course, it will all get cut out to relieve it in the middle. So in order to cut it, I need to fire up the angle grinder. Now I'm going to switch you off at this point because, let's be honest, whilst angle grinders and sparks all look very impressive if you're one of the American car show producers, I don't really want to get grinding splatter all over the camera, and it makes a terrible racket. So I'll do that and then we shall return shortly. Okay, so we're back, and as you can see, I've cut out the main metal plate. Now I've just measured this. It's actually 3mm or 1/8 of an inch thick steel. Like I said, it's a lot more heavy duty than it needs to, you would think it needs to be, but as I said, there is only going to be a single piece coming down, so I want something fairly substantial. And also, by the time I've finished with this, there isn't going to be a lot of it left. As you can see from all the mess on the workbench, I've been busy with the angle grinder and the welder. So I've just welded up this little T-piece, and that is going to sit just in there underneath the tray. So designed it so that it will actually fit with two little bolts coming up through this recess here, and then there'll be another one here just underneath the tool strap, or the tool kit strap. I've also marked it all up with some permanent marker, scribed some centre lines, and easiest way to mark up steel. So now I'm going to head off into the machine shop and start drilling a load of holes in this and just rounding off the edges, tidy things up a little bit. So again, don't really want to see that, it's a bit boring, so I'll be back in a few minutes and you can see the finished result, but you kind of get the gist. That's going to sit on there like that, and as I said, this is going to get some serious cutting down and a bit more shape added to it to make it a bit more interesting. So off to the machine shop, let's get drilling, and I will be back shortly. Okay, so I've drilled some lightning holes in the bottom, rounded off the edges, and I've just tack welded the main plate on with a couple of little tacks just to hold it in place. So now we just need to work out where I'm going to fix it on the under tray. Unfortunately, Honda, in their infinite wisdom, provided a little drain hole right in the centre of the tail light, and there's some marks at the back, so it should be fairly easy to line up. Now I'm just going to get my little drill. And this is actually a little power driver, but it's ideal for drilling through plastic because it's quite slow, so you don't generate much heat. Here's the first hole. I'm just going to grab a random bolt. Just to hold it in place. Would have helped if I'd used a 6mm drill bit rather than a 5.5, but here we go. Perfect. Okay. Now obviously these are just some random bolts that are going to do for mocking up. They'll get replaced with something a bit more suitable. In due course. Yeah, I think. Now, access isn't exactly brilliant here, so let's... It would obviously be a lot easier if I took the tail light off, but trying to save a bit of time. Struggling to find some suitable nuts. Okay, so that's that mounted onto the under tray, and yes, I know it looks massively stupid and huge, but like I said, it's all going to get trimmed down. So let's move to the back of the bike and reassemble everything. Now I'm getting quite good at fitting this. I think it's been on and off so many times. It's not really funny. And the rear cowl, which we will be doing a bit of a repair job on later. You can see, as so often happens, this rear lug is broken, but that's for another video. Okay, quite happy with that. It's just a bit of a clear up. And I'll try and zoom you in. And here you can see the sharkish fin sticking out the back. Now, as I said, I do want it to be able to take a standard number plate, if I have to. Or this much smaller number plate. Now the crazy thing is, I think I'm actually preferring the standard number plate. I quite like the angle. Zoom you out a little bit again. So, got the, turn it round, you can probably see it better. I've got my angle. And all I need to do is I'm going to have a plate that comes across that the number plate will bolt onto. And we just need to now tidy all this up. So let's start sketching some ideas. Penny washers, absolutely fantastic for drawing round and planning things. Okay, I think I'm quite happy with that. Yeah, so I know you couldn't really see a lot there, but it'll all make sense in a minute. Okay, we're back. Now, unfortunately, I suffered that ailment that seems to hit every YouTuber, and that is my microphone died. So I've given up on the wireless microphone. I've actually gone back to the old boom mic that I used in the CB-400 videos. I know the sound quality isn't quite as good, but it's reliable. So we're going to be using that from now on. I'm going to give up on the other one. It just seems to eat batteries and turn itself off at random. So, what have you missed? Well, I've made this part, which is the cross piece that will actually hold the number plate itself. The large triangle has gone on a major diet. It's been attacked with the angle grinder, the milling machine and the Dremel just to dress things up. I've cut a little slot in the end here, and the idea is that this cross piece will just fit in the slot, and then obviously we've got our T-piece from earlier on that's going to sit on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you tacking it together. I'm not the world's greatest welder. In fact, my welder is definitely of the budget end of things, and I don't really do enough welding to stay in practice. So let's just set everything up. So you can see I've just got the main triangle and the cross piece, and we've just got to try and get that square, and then I'll just put a couple of little tacks on it just to hold it in place. Now, I did mention earlier I'm not the world's greatest of welders, and my welder is actually only one of these gasless flux core MIGs. I don't do a lot of welding, so I don't really see the point in forking out for a rental bottle. Right. Just check the settings. Untangle the hose. Right, well, that's the welding finished, yeah, unfortunately, even by my standards, it's ended up a little bit agricultural, but the worst of it is up here, and that's going to be hidden from view, but this area's come up pretty well with a little bit of dressing down with the angle grinder, flat disc. It'll be good enough for what I want. So let's get it all back on the bike. Obviously I have made sure it's fully cooled down before bolting it on, because we don't want to go melting the tailpiece. As usual, oh there it is, I've misplaced one of the bolts. So doing all this and you can't see a damn thing, can you? Like I said, these are really only temporary bolts, just for mocking up. Now when I come to assemble it, I will be putting some big old washers underneath the bolts in the bottom. So let's come back when it's all assembled. Okay, so I've refitted everything and let's have a look. So hopefully you can see I've kind of achieved what I was after. Obviously the number plate's just G-clamped on. We've got a nice gap which will allow me to fit the indicators just in here. So yeah, so the number plate's kind of got that floating in space effect, which is what I was after. But also, if need be, I can still fit the original one back on. So yes, apart from the comically tragic welding, which to be fair you aren't going to see anyway. Well, okay, you might if you look right underneath the bike, but the bit you can see isn't too bad. So that's it from another video. Hope you enjoyed that one. Really, that's kind of the end of the fabrication now. So in the next video, we're going to start stripping the bike apart and sorting out what's going to powder coat, what needs rebuilding, and making a big list of parts. So until then, look after yourselves, and thanks for watching.